Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com. I'm Jenna Ellis. Join me tonight for Jenna Ellis Tonight as we discuss everything that you need to know about President Trump's New York City sham trial. Today was closing arguments, jury instructions, and what happens if President Trump is convicted on even one of those 34 criminal indictment charges. Can a sitting president run the country from a New York State penitentiary prison yard? Well, anything seems possible in 2024. Our legal eagles will join and help us break it down. They will also discuss the ongoing situation and the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Gaza. The International Criminal Court has said that they are poised to issue arrest warrants, and now the UN court is also suggesting that they are going to order Netanyahu to stand down on the conflict with Rafah. Is this even legal? Is there jurisdiction? Our legal eagles will be here to help. All this and so much more you are not going to want to miss on the Salem News Channel, 9 p.m. Eastern. Jenna Ellis Tonight. See you there. Hi, friends. Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight, and we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an utter disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a constant issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, and those have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. So there are so many reasons that Americans should consider wise investing and investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, download the free investor guide, and I have read it. There is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is the time to not roll the dice on your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that is in gold and that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals and make sure to tell them that I sent you. Good evening and welcome to Jenna Ellis Tonight. So a big week in New York as the trial of Donald Trump for hush money, which I think is a totally sham trial, is reaching its conclusion with closing arguments heard in Judge Merchan's court today. And after heavily litigated jury instructions, this is what Phil Holloway had to say, who is an attorney that's prolific on social media. He said this, quote, "Locals assure me Merchan won't try to jail Trump if he's convicted in the hashtag Trump trial. I'm not sure. In any case, let's say he puts Trump on probation. Merchan can control where he goes and what he does. He can even give him house arrest and curfew. Merchan is chomping at the bit." So there's a lot of unresolved questions whether or not Trump is ultimately found guilty of even one of these ridiculous charges. So let's welcome in the Legal Eagles for more. Today's Legal Eagles are Mike Donnelly, who is an attorney and a professor of law, and also Ron Coleman, who is also an attorney and a member of the Dillon Law Group and hosts the wonderful podcast, The Coleman Nation. So Ron, let's start with you. So this is finally in the hands of the jury after 5 weeks. There are only a couple of outcomes. We could have full guilty, full acquittal. We could have a mixed bill, which I think is probably the more likely potential. This is why a lot of prosecutors really love having multiple counts, because you can kind of, please everyone in their opinion. But the prosecution in this instance only needs conviction on one of these counts. And Judge Merchan is allowing the jury to not even have to be unanimous on the underlying crime, which I think is a huge appellate issue. What say you?
This is the least, I want to say the least of the appellate issues, but this case is just a rolling law school exam. it's a train wreck of appellate issues. There's so many levels of preposterousness. Yes, I agree with you. That was my very, very long way of saying, of course, it's an appellate issue. It's not in and of itself an insane proposition, uh, unless you realize that since it is an element of a criminal conviction, it has to be anonymous, unanimous. Unanimous certainly should be anonymous. In fact, he might even be doing himself a disservice. When I say himself, I mean the judge who is also acting as a prosecutor in this case, because there may very well be somebody on the jury who will say, you may, 8 of you, or the majority of you have voted that that is an underlying crime, but I still disagree, and therefore I'm not going to vote for conviction.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you do have to ultimately have unanimity on any convictions. And if you get even one holdout, which is what Team Trump is, of course, hoping for, that then you would get either a hung jury or, like we saw in, the classic 12 Angry Men, that you can kind of wind your way back from 11 to 1 to, 12-0 saying acquittal. But Mike Donnelly, let's talk about what happens in the instance that President Trump is convicted of even one of these felony counts. As Phil Holloway's post on X mentioned, I mean, this is uncharted territory, and Judge Merchant, even if he granted probation, would still then be able to exercise and exert a lot of authority over President Trump in the middle of campaign season. I mean, what even happens, or what does this look like for a former president with Secret Service security and protection to be jailed?
Well, I guess Judge Merchan wants a new job, Donald Trump's campaign manager. I don't see how the judge
He might
can
be better than the current one, honestly, but okay. So,
Well, the Bronx rally worked out pretty well for Trump, but yeah, I don't see how Judge Merchan can jail President Trump. I mean, in theory, he could, but look, the jury's got to be unanimous. There are actually 2 crimes that the jury has to find. They have to find the first crime, which is a misdemeanor, and then to get to the felony, they have to find that there was a crime of falsifying documents, and it's basically the same charge with different documents. So what are they going to find? One document was falsified by Mr. Trump. Like, he's the one who has to actually have falsified the document. So I'm wondering how they're going to deal with that. Secondly, they have to find there's this additional crime could have been committed. And they're trying to point to this federal election charge as a potential crime. So there's a lot of opportunities here for the jury to say, you know what, we're not going to deal with this. We're just going to let somebody else convict President Trump. That's what I hope happens and should happen. If the trial comes back with a guilty verdict and Judge Merchan actually tries to jail President Trump, I mean, we'll evict him, we'll elect him as president, and then he'll pardon himself from jail, and then they'll let him out.
well, but is that even able to be pardoned because this is a state level offense? I mean, wouldn't
That's
that have to be through the New York State or, that type of pardon authority? And so, I mean, could we theoretically, Ron, have a president that is run? I mean, the Oval Office becomes like the courtyard of a New York State prison. I mean, this is preposterous, but that's what we're potentially looking at.
Yeah, I think there's no chance of that. This will reach the New York Court of Appeals in the event that the First Department doesn't deal with, if Merchant really goes through with his insane plan, which is a distinct possibility. There is a school of thought that he wants to play it out as long as he possibly can. After all, if the jury does the job for him, he doesn't have to worry about being reversed if there's an acquittal. And meanwhile, he can still face all his friends in New York society, not as the guy who dismissed an obviously unlawful prosecution, but as the guy who presided over the absolutely justified and noble attempt to put the most dangerous man since Attila the Hun behind bars.
We're going back further even than Hitler. We're to Attila the Hun,
Hitler's old.
which
Yeah, no, forget.
so yeah, that's old news. Okay, yeah, but let's get to a second story that also deals with President Trump, because he has been out on the campaign trail, and he spoke at the Libertarian Party convention, which to me was a little bit of an interesting play. RFK Jr. also spoke there. Trump put on Truth Social that he didn't seek that nomination because obviously he's running as a Republican, which makes sense. But nevertheless, he spoke at this convention, and which, are the capital L libertarians. And he actually promised them this. Listen.
And if you vote for me on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served.
So free Ross, free Ross. And listeners will recognize Ross Ulbricht as the founder of the Silk Road, which was this dark web space that sold all kinds of illicit drugs. He also allegedly took out a hit on an individual. I don't think that actually occurred. So he wasn't charged with murder or attempted murder, but was convicted of a whole host of other crimes related to drug possession, drug distribution, and so forth. In my view, Mike Donnelly, this is using the power of pardon to curry favor with voters, which is not what our founders intended by giving the last full stop of justice, speaking of pardon power, to the executive at the federal level and then also at the state level. And so while Trump is in the midst of his own sham trial, and I think deserves to be acquitted, and this should have never come up to begin with, he's now turning around and suggesting that he's going to use the power of pardon against someone who I don't think deserves it. This guy has a life sentence, and I think he should serve it because of the crimes that he was found guilty of. So what do we do to reconcile what Trump is doing now with what he's suggesting in terms of the weaponization of government against himself?
Well, you may not think the founders intended that, Jenna, and that may be true, but the president has a virtually absolute authority to pardon and commute sentences for crimes committed against the United States of America. And, we discussed this in the presidential immunities case a little bit. How far does the presidential immunity go? And Mr. Trump is giving us all kinds of interesting legal issues to discuss, testing the boundaries of the Constitution. So this matter has not been tested, even as it relates to state offenses, which you mentioned before. Most people don't think the pardon power goes to state offenses, but has that been tested? That hasn't really been tested. How far does the president's power to pardon and commute sentences go? It looks like we're going to find out.
Very interesting point. And Ron Coleman, so as far as this promise to the Libertarian Party, what's your thought on that? And do you think that these people who then ultimately nominated some other kind of rainbow carrying wacko to be their nominee, are they even going to care?
Let's not yet. I mean, talking about the insanity of the Libertarian Party, not to be confused with libertarians or the libertarian movement or philosophy, is not productive. I think it was an absolutely brilliant move. I think there was no downside for it, and it demonstrated that this is a man who doesn't fear being contradicted, doesn't fear going into the lion's den, can walk on his own 2 feet. I think that politically, no downside. I do think you're asking really important questions, but I do think there is a really fundamental difference between promising to get the government, to deprive the government of one of its victims. Reasonable people can agree about whether or not he's a victim or whether he was overcharged, oversentenced. Reasonable people can agree. And promising to lock people up. And remember, last time around, he did promise to lock someone up and didn't.
That's a great point. And we've got to leave it there. But the power of pardon, always an interesting topic. We'll be right back with more with our Legal Eagles. Well, friends, you might have heard that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or shopping channels the way that they used to. They've been part of this cancel culture, so they want to pass along the savings directly to you by having a $25 extravaganza. I love that word, extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one-product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out their $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use My Pillows are just $25. My Pillow sandals, also awesome, only $25. Their 6-pack towel sets are $25. And brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium My Pillows with the all-new Giza fabric, just $25. And orders over $75 will receive free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna, or call 800-564-8475 today. That's 800-564-8475, or go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Jenna. We are back with our legal eagles, Ron Coleman and Mike Donnelly, and we turn now to world events. This headline coming from Reuters. An Israeli airstrike triggered a fire that killed 45 people in a tent camp in the Gazan city of Rafah, officials said on Monday, prompting an outcry from global leaders who urged the implementation of a world court order to halt Israel's assault. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strike had not been intended to cause civilian casualties. Quote, in Rafah, we already evacuated about 1 million non-combatant residents, and despite our utmost effort to not harm non-combatants, something unfortunately went tragically wrong, he said in a speech in Parliament that was interrupted by shouting from opposition lawmakers. So, a lot of people have said, Mike Donnelly, that this is really bad optics for Israel, and now the UN International Court has put out an order from their chief judge that all of Israel's efforts in Rafah have to stop. And of course, this coming as the ICC has issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and other Israeli officials. So does this change the landscape with this quote unquote tragic mistake?
Well, these kinds of mistakes are tragic and it's unfortunate, but let's remember how this started. This started back in October when Hamas horribly, in the Pearl Harbor of Israel's history, invaded unprovoked and ended up killing 1,300 people and absconding with hundreds of victims as hostages who have been treated in the most despicable fashion. And so when Karim Khan issued arrest warrants for Hamas leaders, it was the right thing to do. Seeking arrest warrants from the pretrial chamber against Benjamin Netanyahu and the defense minister Gallant is absolutely absurd, and is just ridiculous and hypocritical. Look, let's a couple things here. One, Palestine, or Palestinians, Hamas, the Gaza Strip, was brought into the ICC. It should never have been. It's not a state. Israel is. And Article 17 of the treaty, the Rome Statute, so-called, says that it's only supposed to bring prosecutions against states that are unwilling or unable to prosecute or to investigate crimes of war crimes. Israel is fully capable, and there's no reason to believe that they're unwilling to investigate the conduct of the war. In war, there are mistakes that happen. I know I was in a war, I was back in Desert Storm 1, and it's a terrible thing. And what's happening in Gaza is horrible. But how can Israel exist against this existential threat to its existence from Hamas without destroying Hamas? I don't see how it can.
Yeah, well, I mean, the rules of engagement and certainly to retaliate and protect themselves, I think are justified even in the midst of this horrific attack that, Ron Coleman is bad optically, but at the same time, Mike Donnelly makes a very good point that, in war, there are going to be casualties. Unfortunately, there may be mistakes, but does this justify what the UN court and the ICC are attempting to do, which is to get Israel to back down?
These organizations have been completely captured by blocks of nations that are hostile to everything you and your viewers and everyone in this conversation holds dear. not merely uninterested in it, actively hostile to it. Everything they do is about propaganda. Everything they do is about justifying their own lifestyles and maximizing their personal wealth. These people are garbage people. What they have to, of course, everything is. Once you see that Israel is on the docket of either the International Criminal Court or the United Nations, you know the rest of the story every single time. They don't care about Africans being enslaved. They don't care about Muslims being the victim of mass murder. They don't care about Chinese Muslims. They don't care about Arab Muslims. They don't care about Indonesian Muslims. They don't care about anything but following the money and justifying their existence to the other NGOs that are in the same business. It's not even worth talking about.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think you're right that it isn't worth talking about, and yet it is giving the leftists something to talk about. And so, Mike, when you have these NGOs that are suggesting that that now the Biden administration shouldn't give any more help or assistance to Israel, so far, Biden's State Department has stood firm that the ICC doesn't have jurisdiction. They are still standing more or less with Israel, even though I think Biden could do a lot more. Heading into 2024, does this become a political issue in terms of the election? And what should President Trump do to maybe put some pressure on the Biden administration to stand firm with Israel?
It should be an issue. We need to talk about it. And I appreciate where Ron is coming from and agree. This is a globalist elite trying to undermine national sovereignty, and that we have to stand against. We go from one rogue prosecutor in New York City to another rogue prosecutor over in The Hague. Okay, they both want to just throw out crazy ideas about who should be convicted of crimes. This is serious business here. The ICC is supposed to be about the most heinous, serious war crimes. And this guy has been involved in the ICC for a long time, so a lot of it probably has to do with trying to advance the court as an internationalist control mechanism. I mean, think about it this way. If Karim Khan was in charge on December 7th, 1941, and 6 months later, he'd be bringing an indictment against Emperor Hirohito, Adolf Hitler, as well as Theodore Roosevelt and Dwight D. Eisenhower.
These international justice regimes or quasi-regimes were created in order to address the world's indifference to genocide that took place during World War II. Not only during World War II, not only the Jews, but it happened in World War II, and it happened on a massive scale to Jews. They have since been entirely turned around from their original purpose, which was not to protect Jews, but to protect humanity. They are merely tools of not only globalists, but vicious, murderous people. Globalism indeed is a cancer. And this is an egregious example of how it spreads.
Jenny, you asked about the campaign. Just one quick thing. So Joe Biden's State Department is culpable here because they have said on one hand we support Israel, on the other hand we're not going to send them ammunition. We have a red line in Rafah. So what Trump needs to do, in my opinion, is be very clear. We stand with civilization. We stand with a democracy, Israel, that's able to investigate if there are any crimes that need to be investigated. What to do about the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, those are important questions. But Israel should not be on trial here. And the ICC has abrogated legitimacy by doing this.
Yeah, well said. And, in the aftermath of World War II, I mean, as both of you have rightly pointed out, this was all about addressing nuclear power and ensuring that we didn't get to that kind of a, hot war instead of a cold war on, nuclear armament, not Israel retaliating rightfully when they've been attacked. And, there's no accountability, it seems, for the ICC. And we've only got about 20 seconds, Mike Donnelly, but where is the accountability for the ICC or the UN court? It seems like they're just able to act without, with impunity.
Well, they do seem to be. They're going to try to aggrandize their role because it matters to them. But Article 51 of the UN Charter says that states can defend themselves. Israel is defending itself, and it should be permitted to do so without this kind of intervention from the ICC. and the Biden administration needs to be more
well
clear.
said. Well said with our legal eagles. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Hi friends, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight, and we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an utter disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a constant issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, and those have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. So there are so many reasons that Americans should consider wise investing and investments in gold and silver, and legacy precious metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, download the free investor guide, and I have read it. There is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is the time to not roll the dice on your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that is in gold and that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals and make sure to tell them that I sent you. Well, with everything going on that is very concerning in world events and domestic events, the number one issue for American citizens remains the border. The Biden administration has intentionally tried to cause the border to be wide open with millions and millions of illegals coming in that are not being vetted, that have no security, no anything. Why? Because the great replacement is happening before our very eyes. The Democrats have been very clear that they want to turn illegals into citizens, and not just permanent residents that get their green card. No, why citizens? Because citizens can vote. They can't on their own policy platforms with their own candidate, or all of their inflation and economy, and obviously all of their really stupid policy that is affecting everyday Americans. They're losing tons of support. They can't get up to the levels that they need, not just in the presidential election, but all the way down ticket, without getting votes from somewhere. So what are they doing? They are trying to import them. Fox News reporter Bill Melugin had this just a couple of days ago from someone at the border who came in illegally himself, talking about the lack of security. This is wild. Watch this clip.
Did you have to pay a cartel?
Yes.
How much?
Around 10,000.
10,000?
Yes. In fact, the American people is right, completely true. Who come into this country, they don't know. Well, okay, I'm good, but how if they're not good? How they're killer, psychopath, else? No guarantee of that. Why, like no security, no security check, no background check.
No security check, no background check. You're worrying about who's crossing the border?
Yes. Of course, me, because I'm like, people are not look normal.
Okay, so if that guy is concerned about all of the unvetted illegals that are crossing the border into a country that is not even his own yet, why aren't more American citizens continuing to sound this alarm? President Trump should totally just ignore everything else that is happening and focus almost exclusively on the border. This is the number one issue. We saw that coming out of even the primaries, that for Americans, the number one issue is the border. President Trump has a huge opportunity to truly change the narrative around this election and force the Biden administration to deal with these questions and deal with these very big concerns. And let's remember, President Trump was very secure on the border when he was in office. That was one of the best things that he did in office. Why isn't he focusing more? If I could advise President Trump of one thing, it would be to talk endlessly about the border. Because let's journey back. Remember what Chuck Schumer said and the Democrats have said, and they have been completely open. You don't even have to believe me. Listen to what they're saying about how they want to give citizenship to millions and millions of illegals. Listen to this from Chuck Schumer from November of 2022.
Now more than ever, we're short of workers. We have a population that is not reproducing it on its own with the same level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
So he's very clear. Path to citizenship is exactly what their goal is. He didn't even mince his words. And 11 million is, I think, a huge underestimate. It's probably more like 22 to 25 million. And we've seen how many illegals that Joe Biden and his administration have admitted that they are just flying into this country. And what are we going to do? Mass deport them? Even if President Trump wins office again, that should be his number one priority, is to track these people down, say absolutely no more loopholes in the immigration law and mass deportations. We have to protect and preserve our country because only citizens of the United States should vote. And it shouldn't be people who have been here for 2 seconds or who are being intentionally imported into this country that don't share our same values that then can shape who serves in public office. There needs to be so much more attention to this issue from all conservative media and especially the presumptive GOP candidate, President Trump. I would love to see so much more of this. I mean, who cares about the rest of it? Because if we don't have a citizenry that is American only that are voting in our elections, we have lost ground before we even have an election. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Now turning to a much more difficult and tragic story to cover. I'm sure that all of you by now have heard about the young missionary couple, Davy and Natalie Lloyd, that were killed by Haitian gangs just north of Port-au-Prince, Haiti over the weekend. And this was such a tragic, tragic story, and it shows how important it is to hug your loved ones. You never know the last time that you'll see them. And it's also very important that Christians continue to do the work of missionaries and to promote the truth of the gospel of Christ, because God is still in the business of winning hearts and minds and changing souls. And we can claim as many people as possible for the kingdom. So President Trump, over the weekend at one of his events, also mentioned it. This is what he had to say.
I also want to pay our deepest respects to the 2 young missionaries from Missouri, Davy and Natalie Lloyd, that were viciously killed yesterday in Haiti. It was a horrible thing, and I just want to pay our respects to their families. They're great families, incredible people, and it's a very, very sad moment. What happened was so horrible. So to Davy and Natalie, please, thank you very much.
Very kind of President Trump. And he also reached out to the father of Natalie Lloyd, Representative Baker, and a number of Missouri politicians have also lent their voices in support of bringing Davy and Natalie home. And this is what Senator Josh Hawley wrote to President Biden in part. He said, days ago, 2 Missouri missionaries, Natalie and Davy Lloyd, were brutally murdered by Haitian gangs as they were working to minister to the Haitian people. On the night they were besieged by gangs, my office urgently requested help from the U.S. Embassy in Port-au-Prince. The embassy informed us that it was, quote, too dangerous to send police to aid the Lloyds. Now they are dead. As I write, Natalie and Davy Lloyd's remains are still not home and reunited with their families. Their government failed them in their hour of need. Now I ask that you take all available steps to ensure that adequate security measures are in place to safely return Natalie and Davy's remains to the United States. I ask that you take action as expeditiously as possible. Natalie and Davy devoted their lives to spreading the gospel and serving others. As Missouri mourns their loss, I ask you to mobilize all resources at your disposal to protect the transport of the Lloyd's remains back to Missouri. This is the least your government owes our citizens. So Representative Ben Baker out of Missouri is the father of Natalie Lloyd, and he joins me now. Sir, thank you so much for joining me and to continue to tell the story of your daughter and her husband and their deep love for the Haitian people, and even more importantly, the truth of the gospel of Christ. Before we get into the politics of the situation, what is it that you would like to convey about Natalie's life and your loss?
I really think you can't sum it up better than what was on her Facebook profile. In her bio, she made the statement, "I want to live intentionally in the light of eternity." And she also mentioned in her bio, Davy Lloyd was everything to Natalie. She loved him dearly, and even in the end, you saw that play out. But Natalie was a special person, and Davy was as well. They were exceptional young people, very brilliant, so dedicated, and just determined to do something for God, and to do His will, and to love the people of Haiti and to minister to them. And so we want them to be remembered for who they were and what they accomplished. And I think their legacy will live on.
And I am so deeply sorry for your loss. And it's amazing that you continue to tell the truth of their story and how this has now garnered worldwide attention to what missionaries do and why it is so incredibly important. And so I'm very grateful to you for having the courage to speak out. And so as you're looking forward to the transport of them home. What is the current situation, and how can our Salem Media family pray for you and your family, and also for Davy Lloyd's family?
Well, that's been one of the most, the process is difficult just because Haiti is so chaotic, and communication is difficult, and it's just, it exacerbates all the process. So I think we have, a plan in place. I think we do have an airline that has committed to bringing them home, and we're still working on some of the paperwork, and our embassy is working down there. I think very feverishly, and to trying to get them to expedite these documents as much as is possible, so that we can try and get them home this week, if at all possible. So that has been a difficult thing for us. It's just, a lot of things are in limbo, and you feel helpless, like you can't do anything about it other than pray. And so it's been a difficult process, as well as grieving at the same time. And so, but we're believing the Lord that everything will go smoothly from here, and hopefully we can lay them to rest.
And I hope that you have that opportunity as well. And you mentioned trying to work out this process while going through grief, and I know that there are parents who have suffered the loss of children. It's an unfathomable type of loss. And how are you, as a Christian and as a father, a husband, dealing with this? And how would you encourage other parents who've gone through this? How you're remaining strong in the Lord?
It's a moment by moment process. I've taught grief from a book perspective and from a biblical perspective before, but having it be so close to your own family and in your own life is a totally different story. And we're learning that moment by moment. But I often turn to the scripture where David cried out to the Lord, and he said, "Lead me to the rock that is higher than I." And to me, I can't imagine doing this without the Lord. I can't imagine doing it without the love and the support of so many people who have reached out, and friends and family. We've had an overwhelming response to this, and it just shows how much Davy and Natalie were loved, and how much their example is just such a shining light and shining example of people who lived a life that was selfless, and they put others before themselves, and they loved people even when that love wasn't returned. And it's such a contrast, I think, to our world today, and to especially the younger generation, that I just believe that their example is having a powerful impact with people and changing lives. We've heard so many stories already of people that their lives have been changed. I heard this morning of a man who came to the Lord and was baptized yesterday as a result of this. And so I know the Lord is using it, even though I can't understand it, and it hurts more than anything I've ever dealt with. But we're trusting the Lord.
That's an amazing testimony. And it is hard to process grief. And, you can think of it in a in one sense, academically or philosophically as Christians do, but it's another thing when it touches you personally. And I'm so grateful that you are seeing in real time the blessings of what their story is reaping for the Lord's kingdom, and that their legacy is living on. And I know that would mean everything to them. I didn't know them personally, but just as fellow Christians, that's all that we could ask for. And I so appreciate you being willing to come on and share your heartfelt sincerity. And I just want to take a moment, if I can, to pray for you, because we didn't have an opportunity to do that on radio this morning. And Father, I just lift up Representative Ben Baker, his family, and the family of Davy Lloyd. And Lord, we grieve with them. The Bible says to rejoice with those who rejoice, to weep with those who weep. And they're weeping right now, Lord. And please bring them the comfort that only you can. And I'm so thankful that on a Christian network like Salem, we can pray publicly, that we're still in a country that can pray publicly, that can encourage missionaries. And Lord, I just pray that you would give them the peace that passes all understanding, and use this story for good, and to show the Baker family and the Lloyd family your real and true presence. It's in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit we pray. Amen. Representative Baker, I wish we had more time. Thank you so much, and may their memory always be a blessing. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Well, yesterday the nation commemorated Memorial Day, which is a recognition of all of the men and women who have served in our military and armed forces, that have truly given their all and the last full measure of their devotion for the promulgation of liberty in this nation, and their service should be recognized. And so joining me now to talk about the Mighty Oaks Foundation that helps veterans is the author of the book, Not the Solution, Winning the Battle Against Suicide, is Jeremy Stalnecker. And Jeremy, thanks so much for joining. I think that Memorial Day is a really great moment to focus on veterans that are still with us, and ensuring that they get some of the resources and help that they need after their service.
Yeah, you're right. This is an opportunity, and Memorial Day is different than Veterans Day. We know that Veterans Day is an opportunity for us to celebrate everyone who served and is serving, and that is really a celebration. That's the time of year where we can celebrate the fact that there are folks out there doing the work that needs to be done. And Memorial Day is different in that we remember those who have, as you mentioned a moment ago, given the last full measure of devotion. They've laid down their lives for the freedoms that we enjoy. And so we stop, we pause, we remember, and that is such an important thing for us to do. But that does, in a lot of ways, motivate folks like us and the Mighty Oaks Foundation and others who serve veterans to continue to support the men and women who have served and are struggling as a result of their service. We know that many lay down their lives for these freedoms that we enjoy, but many then carry those, what we call unseen wounds of combat, through the rest of their lives. And we have the opportunity to support them. So this is a very important weekend, a very important, we call it a holiday, but moment for us to pause, reflect on what has been done, and look forward to the work that continues to be done.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it, to stop and pause and reflect. I mean, so much of American culture is so fast-paced that we rarely take time to stop and pause and look around us and see that there are others that are still suffering, as you mentioned, some of the unseen wounds that they have encountered and still continue to suffer from their service. And so the Mighty Oaks Foundation in particular has helped so many veterans who are contemplating suicide, which is, a very, very difficult subject matter, to see that they have hope in something greater and that they still have life beyond the military. So talk about this program, and maybe for a veteran or a family member of a veteran who needs help, who's watching right now, can understand what your program provides and maybe get themselves or their loved one involved.
I appreciate that. We serve veterans, active duty service members, first responders, and their spouses. We have programs going on all of the time across the country. About 900 folks this year will attend one of our week-long programs. And really, we talk about trauma, the trauma that is either connected to life, taken into military service, or service in the community. or those traumas that we endure because of our service. But understanding that that trauma does not need to identify us or define us, that we can move forward in spite of what's happened beyond or behind us, and even more, not just move forward, but move forward in a hope-filled, purposeful way. Understanding you went into the military for a noble purpose and for the ability to serve something bigger than yourself, and you can continue to do that beyond your military service. And so we do our best to equip folks, and thankfully we have amazing supporters that have allowed us to do this, where the program doesn't cost anything. Travel to get to the program doesn't cost anything. We do our best to make it available to those men and women who want to attend. They need to invest 5 days, and we can help them with that. But these problems are big. You talk about the suicide problem. We know that just over 7,000 men and women were killed in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan over 20 years. But more than 30,000 of those same men and women who served in Iraq and Afghanistan have come home, found a life that was hopeless to them, and taken their lives. And it's amazing to look at those numbers. And that, again, motivates us, particularly on a holiday like this one, a remembrance time like this. It motivates us to engage in that. And we've been blessed to be able to help many folks.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for the Mighty Oaks Foundation and for your work. I mean, we all saw the recent headline of the young golfer who was only 30 who tragically took his own life. I mean, suicide can touch anyone, and especially
Yes.
veterans. And so how can people, if they're interested in getting involved and committing those 5 days, how can they get in touch with the Mighty Oaks program?
The easiest way is just to go to our website, mightyoaksprograms.org, mightyoaksprograms.org, and there you will find ways to get involved. If you know someone who is in the military or was in the military as a first responder, you can find some great resources there to help them. But if you are one of those, there's a place to apply for the program. Apply. We take care of everything after that, and we'll set you up. We'll work with your schedule to get you to where you need to be. But mightyoaksprograms.org, a place to apply, a place to support, and some great resources for you as well.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jeremy Stalnecker. Really appreciate it. And that is all the time that we have here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. And big thank you to all of the guest hosts over the last 2 weeks who sat in for me. Great friends, really grateful for all of you so that I could have a little bit of time off as well with my family. But I'll see you tomorrow night.